Hey, what is going on, everyone? Well, I'm so glad that you have took your time to spend with me right here today on the MRB Wrestling Review Show. I am your co-host, Mike Big Rock Wilson, and last night, TNA Impact Wrestling presented Hardcore Justice. The show kicked off with a four-way match. A ladder match, and the winner received 20 points for the Battle for Glory series. It was Austin Aries, Kazarian, AJ Styles, and Jeff Hardy. What I like about this match is that all these four guys have some sort of high-flying aspect, so it was never a dull moment throughout this match. Jeff Hardy, we all know he's an established superstar who works well with a ladder. AJ Styles, he's another guy who's, even though he's being rebooted as a grappler, he still has some high-flying aspects throughout his arsenal. And Frankie Kazarian, he's also a guy that does some incredible high-flying action, as well as Austin Aries. All those four guys really legitimately stole the show last night. And with that being said, this is a match that I felt that Kaz needed to win because he only has a couple of points in the Battle for Glory series, and even though he needed that win, Kaz is not a guy that should win the Battle for Glory series, but still should have some points in the Battle for Glory series. And with that being said, the winner of this match was Frankie Kazarian, and what happened was that Bobby Roode and Christopher Daniels came out and, cost a couple of people the match, and then when it's all said and done, this new three-pair group of Bobby Roode, Christopher Daniels, and Frankie Kazarian looked great last night. And with that being said, later on in the show, Bobby Roode, Magnus, Joe, and Anderson were in a tables match, and the winner got 20 points also in the Battle for Glory series. And the same thing happened as well. Kaz and Christopher Daniels came out and cost a couple of people the match so that Bobby Roode can capitalize and get the win. And last night, these three guys looked great throughout the show. And I'm just gonna nitpick, this tables match. I know they had the table set up at the corner, and you put your opponent through the table. A win is a win, but I find it's more impactful when the table is set up, like in the ring itself, so that you get a better, crack from the table. I'm just nitpicking the tables match because, with that being said, that is what happened in this tables match. So I like those little things like that. And in that ladder match. In that kickoff ladder match, they use ladders, but they're not really stable. I would rather see them use ladders like they use in the WWE. They're more stable, so that when the opponent climbs up the ladder, it's not as shaky as it was. And there was a moment in that ladder match where the guy's leg was twisted up, and it kind of twisted the ladder. It wasn't really stable. It was shaky, and they still used it. And those little things like that really kind of bothered me because what if the ladder somehow manages to fall on its own? So with that being said, it was an okay ladder match. Even though those four guys stole the show, the ladder match itself was just alright. Only because of that nitpicking factor, with the ladders not being as stable as they are. But with that being said, Hardcore Justice last night was actually a pretty decent, the free pay-per-view match live on television. Also last night, the main event Mafia was without Kurt Angle because Kurt Angle last week got involved into a some sort of thing involving, some sort of a DUI, and he got arrested, and now he's in rehab. And Dixie Carter mentioned that, and they needed a replacement for their 5-on-5 match. And I guess that was an opportunity to sell the Bellator rivalry between Tito Ortiz and Rampage Jackson, because before they got to them, Sting kind of wanted Austin Aries to be a part of the team, but to no avail. Austin has said no, he's not going to do it, even though they never actually saw him say that. They teased it, and I like those little things like that happened backstage on the show. And with that being said, throughout that match, actually, not the match, but throughout that promo, something Magnus said kind of threw me off. I wasn't expecting it, and it wasn't, he said, someone's going to get the pig slit, baby, and it was something along those lines, and it kind of made me wonder, is he taking this seriously, because it is a serious match? And that being said, it's just another nitpicky moment where I felt that Magnus and the other guys are not taking this seriously, and Mr. Anderson kind of got the better of the promos between those two guys, because he done the head count, and then they attacked them, and they realized they got the numbers to their advantage. And I'm still looking forward to this match next week, even though it was kind of a little spoiled, because I expected something to happen next week, and it happened last night on TNA, and I'll get to that later on. Also last night, ODB, Gail Kim, and Mickie James were involved in a triple threat hardcore rules match, and I like the little things that happens throughout this match. ODB, God bless her, used her bra as a weapon. They'll do anything in TNA. TNA Impact Wrestling does not hold back. And you know what? And kudos to ODB for using her bra as a weapon. And and when ODB got the win, you still saw that bra sticking out of her clothes. And just those little things like that just really bring out the comedy aspect throughout that match. And I like those things coming from ODB. Gail Kim and Mickie James were good throughout that match. I think Gail Kim was the real winner, because they really showed her talent in that match. And with that being said, even though they showed talent throughout that match, it was still a hardcore match. So there's so much you can do when it comes to the wrestling aspect of it. And I felt there was, even though they done all they could do, I felt that there was more wrestling than there was steel chairs and other objects, etc., etc. And I think that was a match that really solidified what they're going to do for Battle for Glory. There could be a triple threat match involving those three knockouts for the Knockouts champ. It's looking that way, and I think that's probably the best thing they can do for the Knockouts division on TNA. Also last night, Rampage Jackson asked Tito Ortiz to join the main event Mafia in the 5-on-5 match next week. And what I really like about that talking dialogue segment is that it kind of made up for the past 2 weeks when when Tito Ortiz came in and the crowd wasn't really into it. And same as last week when Kurt Angle and Bully Ray were kind of exchanging words to Tito Ortiz, and that segment didn't work. I think last night kind of made up for that, and because the fans seemed a little bit more into it, because we know that these two guys, Rampage and Tito Ortiz, are going to have a match on MMA in November, and they're going to play on that on TNA. So I don't mind it happening. It's just that TNA is totally different from MMA, and I think they should leave the MMA stuff left on MMA and not played out on TNA. But I think, because, there is a connection between MMA and Impact Wrestling, they're going to have to do something, to build it up. And with that being said, what happened was that at the end, Tito Ortiz kind of, backstabbed Rampage Jackson in that steel cage match. And with that being said, Bully Ray got the win over Chris Sabin. He's the new TNA World Heavyweight Champion right now. And I think that was probably the best way to go going into Bound for Glory because, let's face it, Chris Sabin, he's a paper/transitional champion. And he can only hold the title for so long until they drop it on him. And I think that was the right thing to do for Bound for Glory because the winner of the Bound for Glory series will end up facing Bully Ray, even though Chris Sabin is going to get a rematch anyway. He's not going to be the guy going into Bound for Glory as the World Heavyweight Champion. And with that being said, the winner of the Bound for Glory series will probably end up facing Bully Ray for the world title at Bound for Glory. And I'm still leaning towards AJ Styles, even though some of these guys are only now coming into the Bound for Glory series with some momentum, but I think it's a little bit too late. And Bobby Roode is kind of a case of that. Even though he's a guy that could be in the Final Four, I don't know if I see him winning the Bound for Glory series. And with all that being said, there was a backstage segment, earlier. Bully Ray talking to Brooke. We don't know yet if it was Brooke Hogan. It could be Brooke Tessmacher for all we know. Yet I don't know. And going back to that steel cage match, I like the little things that happened. Chris Sabin tried to lift Bully Ray a couple of times to no avail. He got him up after, and then he got him up again, and then the whole thing with Tito Ortiz and Rampage. Mr. Anderson coming out and tried to cause Chris Sabin the match. I would rather the end result just Mr. Anderson causing Chris Sabin the match because, earlier backstage, there were seeds planted of a Bully Ray and Anderson split up. And just to have that happen, Mr. Anderson causing Sabin the match and Bully Ray regaining the World Heavyweight Championship will probably solidify that Bully Ray could face Mr. Anderson at Bound for Glory, perhaps, because, they're the president and vice president of Aces and Eights. And that storyline could have played out, and I think, they kind of dropped the ball with that due to, Tito Ortiz and Rampage Jackson coming out, and Tito Ortiz backstabbing Rampage, and the result of the Bully Ray regaining the world title. Even though I like that he regained the world title, how it happened, I'm not too fussy on it. I think I would rather just Mr. Anderson cussing Chris Sabin and then Bully Ray gaining the victory. I would rather do without, the whole thing with Rampage and Tito Ortiz on last night's episode, because, they could have used that for next week. Just to have that, those a few teaser moments that happened throughout the show, and it all boils down to next week's 5-on-5 match. But with all that being said, I like what happened on TNA last night. And that was my review of Impact Wrestling. I'm your co-host for the MRB Wrestling Review Show, signing out. To all your viewers watching, get plenty of rest, and always do your best.